Thanks, Griffin and Andres. Moving on to the NBA, we're going to talk the biggest trade that's happened in recent memories between the Nets and the 76ers. Joining me is Jair Brooks Davis. Jair, this past couple days ago, we saw James Harden, Paul Millsap going down to Philly, coming back up to Brooklyn, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. Let's start simple. Who won this trade?
Max, the Philadelphia 76ers won this trade. You are getting a former MVP in James Harden coming to your team to be paired with a potential MVP in Joel Embiid to be your secondary scorer. Can't get any better than that.
All right. This is where I'm going to tell you politely that you are wrong, and now I'm going to get not so politely. You're forgetting about one player on the Nets named Kevin Durant, who when he comes back will reassure everyone that he is the best basketball player on planet Earth. What have the Nets' biggest problems been this year? Defense, rebounding, rim protecting. They get all of that in this trade. Ben Simmons, you can meme his shooting all you want, and it's well-deserved. But you cannot meme his defensive effort. He is one of the premier defenders in the NBA. And then you look at a guy like Seth Curry, who can shoot the lights out of the ball. 5th place all-time percentage-wise in NBA three-point shooting history. And then Andre Drummond, a guy who's averaged over 10 rebounds a game for his career. The Nets got stronger in their weak places, and they didn't lose too much with losing Harden. And when I say that, I'm not diminishing Harden's skill levels. Obviously, he is a fantastic scorer. He's a fantastic facilitator of the basketball. But they have Kevin Durant. They have Kyrie Irving. They have guys that can score the basketball. So getting those other pieces to surround those two guys, I think, is more important than having that third great scorer in James Harden.
But Max, you are paying for a guy like Ben Simmons, a max player who doesn't shoot the ball. That to me is pretty concerning. And I'm hoping that throughout his time off, he was able to master more at the free throw line, and he's not afraid to take layups. And I'm hoping that he at least worked on his shot, shooting around the perimeter.
Jared, can I tell you a little secret? I really don't care if Ben Simmons has been working on his free throw shooting or his three-point shot. I don't need him to score the basketball. If you're a Nets fan, you need him to play great defense, be a facilitator. And when I want to go back to that defensive note for a second, because the Nets, it's been so long since they've had a guy that can guard the 1 through the 4. Kevin Durant, he is an elite defender, but you don't want to put him on the 1 or the 2. Simmons can guard all of those positions. And you don't lose much in the facilitating department with Simmons. It's great. And then I just believe that you look at the weaknesses the Nets had. You look at the strengths that the players they brought in have, and it's like puzzle pieces fitting perfectly together.
But Max, at this point in the season, how long do you think that the team chemistry will be until they are able to work themselves back up in the Eastern Conference at this point?
I mean, team chemistry is one thing when you have players who aren't the best in the world. The Nets have a player who is the best in the world. Look at some of the guys he's won games with this year. Back against those very same 76ers earlier this year, Kevin Durant beat a team that had Patty Mills, Cam Thomas, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Kessler Edwards as his other starters. That is really impressive. If he can do it with those rookies and Patty Mills, I think he can do it with Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond. Chemistry, I'm not worried about at all. The pieces are going to get healthy, and they are going to go back up toward the top of the Eastern Conference. Will they get the 1 seed? That might be a little far-fetched. I think they may have slid a little too far. But looking at Philadelphia for a minute, it's going to be really interesting to see if Harden and Embiid can get it to work.
Max, I think that they'll be able to get it work. You're going to have Harden and you're going to have Embiid with him, or actually it's going to be Embiid and you're going to have Harden with him. You have a guy who can score the ball from behind the three-point arc. He can shoot mid-range. He can drive in. And then you pair him with a guy like Joel Embiid, someone that most people around the NBA, or fans included, deemed to be a potential MVP candidate. It can't get any better than that. And I think Philly is going to find their way to be within the top 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference.
Well, I just can't wait for 2 months from now when James Harden is complaining about something and forces his way out of Philly as well. Well, Jair, great stuff. We are now going to hear from Ariadne Morales with an update on the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Over to you. We are going to hear from Jair Brooks Davis with the Pride Weekly Update.
Hey Sports Beat fans, I'm Jair Brooks Davis, and welcome to this new segment called the Pride Weekly Update, informing you of what's to come for your Hofstra Pride. We have a jam-packed weekend full of sports for you. On Friday, February 18th, we start with the men's and women's cross-country and track teams at the Fast Track Last Chance Indoor Invitational, followed by the men's lacrosse team taking on Navy at home at 6 p.m. The men's tennis team takes on LIU, followed by Lehigh and Rider next week, while the women's basketball team travels to North Carolina to compete against Elon in the CAA conference. Pack the MAC and go see the Pride take on Northeastern basketball in the David S. Mack Sports and Exhibition Complex starting on Saturday at 2 p.m. The Pride is headed to Lancaster, Pennsylvania to compete against Franklin and Marshall for wrestling on Sunday, and the women's basketball team will host Charleston next Wednesday, the 23rd at 7 p.m. Women's lacrosse will be driving up to West Point this weekend to compete against Army, while the Hofstra softball team will be headed to Florida this weekend to compete in the spring games streaming on Flow Softball. The baseball team will be headed to Houston, Texas next weekend, playing Houston Baptist in a series of games, while the men's lacrosse team will host the Long Island Challenge games at Stewart Stadium starting next Friday at 3 p.m. For more information on schedules, live streams, and more, visit GoHofstra.com. That's all for the Pride Weekly Update. Back to you, Max. After a tough 14-11 loss to the Long Island Sharks in the opening round of the Long Island Cup, the Hofstra Pride men's lacrosse team looks to today in the consolation game as they will take on St. John's University. Pride head coach Seth Tierney said post-game on Friday that he expects to make some changes and tweaks to the offense as they were going stagnant throughout the 60 minutes of play. Live from the James M. Stewart Stadium, I'm Jair Brooks Davis.